All right, later this week, Jerome Powell is going to talk about raising interest rates it could be anywhere from 25 to 75 basis points, it looks like. And I'm really excited because every time we have one of those meetings, it shakes up the market and it brings about new buying opportunities. So I kind of view it as like a gift every time there's a discussion, because it shakes up the market. I'm in it for the long run, right? So if it causes mining stocks to go down, if it causes emerging markets to go down, oh, that's good, right? I get another buying opportunity. I look at it as almost like a holiday every time they have one of those meetings. It's kind of interesting because it's a Federal Open Markets Committee, FOMC, and I have FOMO about it, fear of missing out on the meeting. So I just think that's such an interesting coincidence. Now, a lot of people seem to have the idea that if we just keep raising interest rates, we could crash inflation. I want to show a chart of the last time we did it, famously in the 1980s. And you notice how we had inflation until about 82. Interest rates had to be quite a bit higher than inflation rate, at least 5 or 6%. Because if it's lower than inflation or equal to inflation, then it might as well be zero or negative, right? There's no incentive for people to stop consuming. Imagine you lived in a hyperinflation environment where tomorrow $100 was only going to buy a few breadcrumbs, right? Well, you might as well max out your credit card if it's only going to tomorrow. It's only going to charge you the 2% more, right? That's what we're doing with our current interest rates. If anything, our high interest rates are adding to inflation, not subtracting from it, because every time you go buy groceries or buy gas, you're paying the interest on the mortgages that these businesses are taking out, right? Or whatever debt they're taking out. The other problem is, in order to raise interest rates to where inflation really is, which is probably a lot higher than that, you got to remember how we measured inflation in 1980 is very different than today. I wouldn't be surprised if this were actually higher than that. So if we raised interest rates to, let's see, this is 5% more, even if we believe this number, and we raised interest rates to 10%, the other problem is that the federal government would have to pay $3 trillion worth of interest. Right now we're paying $1.5 trillion. And that's if we believe inflation really is only 5%, right? That's a huge assumption right there. So if you take a look at debt to GDP ratio, between 1970 and 1980, it fell from 40% to 30%. But we were spending money on guns and butter. So what did we do? We inflated away our debt even as we were spending, right? Imagine as you're maxing out your credit card, inflation is going out of control and your income is increasing a lot, in numbers at least, increasing a lot faster than your credit card balance, right? That's what the U.S. government did in the 1970s. And then finally in 1982, Paul Volcker raised interest rates to 21%. So in order for this to work, history shows that 20% of 30% is the most we can pay on our interest on the national debt, right? So that's 6% of GDP that we could afford to spend on interest on our national debt. Now this is 2020. This gray area is the pandemic. Now, did we really pay off debt after the pandemic? I seem to remember everybody was getting unemployment. Nobody wanted to work because they were getting 3 times as much on unemployment than they were getting at their jobs. We were spending a lot of money injecting a lot of poison into people's arms. That doesn't sound like paying off the national debt. We inflated away the national debt. And history shows that in order to raise interest rates to 30 or 40% this time, this thing has to drop to 15. Don't forget, we're also spending, right? We're just inflating away. So I suspect by 2030, a dollar will buy what 10 cents used to buy in 2020, just given how much this thing has to drop. Now, a lot of people seem to think that precious metals are the answer to that. But you got to remember, in 1980, there was not a whole lot of vested interest to keep precious metals prices down, right? The government still held a lot of precious metals. Nixon held on to it with diamond hands when he refused to pay out international creditors. But now a lot of the big money holds shorts on precious metals. So I recommend something you can own physically that isn't being shorted: base metals, and especially strategic metals. And maybe some tellurium as well, and some of the rare earth metals.